Well, the Senate voting to block the president from future military strikes on Venezuela. The vote was 52 to 47. 5 Republicans joining the Democrats to pass the measure. The White House has already said it would veto. Joining us now, Brian Gardner, Stifel Chief Washington Policy Strategist. And Brian, it's great to have you on. Let's start right there, because the geopolitical landscape has just been dramatic. Venezuela, Iran, Greenland. I could go down the list. And then, of course, you factor in what we're seeing play out with defense policy right now. What's your take?
My take is I was listening to Richard Bernstein in the previous segment, and he said boring is beautiful. And I chuckled when I heard boring. I'm like, what's boring? There's nothing boring going on in Washington these days. But everything is going on, right? So I think some of this was a little bit predictable. You know, we're going to talk about the court case in a second. We knew that was coming. But in some respects, the other actions are coming out of the November elections, right, where Republicans lost badly. Democrats did quite well, and exit polls showed that voters are very concerned about affordability, and the White House is really leaning in on a lot. And some of the things we're talking about is foreign policy, so you can separate that from the domestic policy issues. But a number of the domestic policy issues and tweets and posts that have come out this week are geared towards that affordability issue, and we're going to be hearing a lot more of that as 2026 goes on.
So if I just dig more deeply into that, I mean, how does that speak to what we're hearing from the president regarding institutional investors and housing? And I realize devil's in the details here, or even what we're seeing right now with Congress with Obamacare subsidies and trying to get those back across the line.
Yeah, so this is a different Republican Party, and so the base of the Republican Party is different than it has been. It's more working class, it's more blue collar. And so you're probably seeing more renters and fewer homeowners in the Republican Party base than we have seen in the past. And the housing issue, we're going to put the particulars of the policy aside, but the politics of it play it's very difficult for Republicans, right? They want to be free market in one respect, but there are a lot of Republicans, more populist Republicans, those in the White House, that view the industry, the single-family rental industry, with a lot of suspicion. So this is a very tempting target, and it's a bipartisan target for them. Who came out sympathetic and in support of what the president announced yesterday? Elizabeth Warren. It's not the first time we've seen her align with the administration on some of these populist issues.
Yeah, I was reading, I think Gavin Newsom of California is looking to do something similarly, reportedly, too. It's certainly interesting. The defense piece of this, I want to get your take because, and I've been describing this in my reporting, but it feels like a carrot stick approach. The carrot being a 50%, potentially 50% increase year over year in the defense budget to $1.5 trillion for fiscal 2027, assuming that can be pulled off. And I realize, again, devil's in the details. And the stick being an executive order that had been anticipated, but was nonetheless signed last night, that ties shareholder returns and executive compensation to defense contractor performance, as this administration wants to see a much more aggressive ramp up and industry investment into things like weapons systems. So how to understand that and what it says about how priorities are being, I guess, shaped moving forward for some of these big industries?
I think there's a lot of frustration within the administration. I think there's probably some frustration up on Capitol Hill on the speed at which larger defense contractors deliver to the federal government under their contracts. And if you look back into the fall to the National Defense Authorization Act, there are provisions in there that make it easier for smaller defense firms to get procurement contracts. So there is an interest, and I think this is one of those bipartisan issues. Not a lot of bipartisanship in Washington, but this is one where I think there's an interest in kind of shaking the large legacy firms out of their doldrums a little bit, having them be more aggressive. And it's so, yes, you said carrot and stick. I would say a lot more on the stick side, though. It's not just the defense budget, but seeing the NDAA pushing to open the door to smaller competitors of the large legacy firms. I think that's part of the overall strategy that's at work here.
And, of course, part of that defense budget increase proposal is tied to being funded by tariffs. So how does that set us up with this IEEPA tariff decision that is potentially imminent from the Supreme Court? We could get it as soon as tomorrow.
Yeah, could be tomorrow. Look, I think the court is going to rule against the administration. I think the ruling is going to be some form, some language saying that the president overstepped his bounds. What that means longer term, I think, is less clear, because since the case was filed, we've had a number of agreements between the United States and trading partners. So that kind of supersedes what goes on in IEEPA. Now, there are a bunch of frameworks with China, with the EU, and other trading partners that haven't been finalized. But when I step back and try and figure out, are those trading partners going to just tear up the framework or the signed documents and say, you know, we won in court, we'll take our chances, I'm kind of suspicious, skeptical, excuse me. I think there are other plans that the administration, other tools the administration has, and so they can pivot to those tools. And I just don't think our trading partners want to take the risk of alienating the administration. So I think it's going to be a fairly toothless victory for the private sector.